activity here.
There we go. And welcome. Here we are. It's wonderful sunny Friday afternoonish, at least
Yeah.
getting close on the West Coast.
Oh, well, it's muggy, 100% humidity here in Grandy Bindi. Um, and it's one of those days where you say, "Thank you, Lord, for air conditioning."
Yeah. I think they made a movie, wasn't that The Dog Days or something? Or
The
Al,
dog days.
Al Pacino was in it. The Dog Days of Summer or something. All about humidity and how tempers flare. And yeah, could be. I'd have to research that. I don't have my phone handy to ask Google or Siri the pertinent questions, so I'll research that later.
Okay. Excuse me. Well, it's Friday, our usual get together, but we didn't have to wait long to get inspired to speak of things this
Well,
morning.
that's right. But before you go any further, we're on episode number of season 4.
4:20.
Ooh,
Yeah. Get another doobie for that one.
have another doobie for that one. That's
There you
right.
go. Yeah. By the way, also, just to let people know that if you want to catch up on the podcast, you can go to Substack at Border Poll, or you can listen to us on iPod, on Apple, or Spotify, because that's the podcast version. Of course, on Rumble for the unedited version, and on YouTube for sometimes the edited version, thanks to YouTube censorship. So uh,
Hmm.
you have to kind of live with that. It is what it is.
And it will be what it will be.
That's right.
Hmm.
Sad but true.
Yes, kind of like our current state of affairs here in the Great White North.
Well, this morning I got up and had my coffee and almost threw it up reading that Canada gave Moldova $6.5 million to improve gender equality and climate change, something or other. And I'm thinking the majority of Canadians couldn't find Moldova on a map. The majority of Canadians never even heard of Moldova. Why on earth is this tone deaf bunch giving $6.5 million to a country on the other side of the globe in Eastern Europe that no one knows anything about in this country? What is the tactical purpose for the government of Canada giving a country like Moldova, which is as crooked as dog's hind legs, is a complete mess in terms of its institutions. It's got criminals who've left the country that there are warrants for because that's how
Well,
bad this is. And if you don't believe me, go to Wikipedia. I mean, it in itself is not the best choice, but just read up on Moldova. And this is a country that this cabal, this regime in Ottawa, just gave $6.5 million. And ask any Canadian, I think, why would we do that? And they would look at you and they say, "What the hell is Moldova?" So
well, I said before pre-production, though, it seems to me that that was kind of the fictional country in the book, The Most That Roared, but obviously it's not fiction.
Well, it's
And I
just
guess for me, $6.5 million, it's a drop in the bucket, really. But here we are running a huge deficit in this country. We have people living on the street. We've got more and more people who are using food banks. Surely to goodness, that $6.5 million would be better spent on our own infrastructure, our own projects, our own getting food from the farming community to the rural to the urban communities. It goes down. To me, it's a no-brainer. Charity begins at home. And I think we have to get back to that fact and start looking at this. And I'm sorry if it offends people. Well, actually, I'm not sorry if it offends people. I think it's time for people to stand up and start thinking about home first. If we've got people living on our streets who can't afford a house, can't afford meals, they are the priorities. If we have veterans that can't get proper medical care, they are a priority. Uh, we've got so much in this country that we could do, but at this point, we're if we're not giving it away to people in other countries, we're giving it away to the people from other countries who are coming here. What were the latest statistics that came out of Ottawa that the average refugee family in Canada is making $85,000 a year? That's about 30,000 more than I make on my pension, for goodness sake.
Yes. Yep.
Let's start looking at home, and I'm sorry if there's what was the statistic, 500,000 people in the refugee stream right now, and the CBSA's statistics of just a couple of days ago said that at one port, Lacal in Quebec, they had 8,500 new claimants. Now, what's wrong? Obviously, to our neighbors to the south, that's 8,500 have self-deported from your country, but they've now become our problem. And in reality, you're not really fixing your problem because they're still going to be up here,
Yes.
close to where you are. So, we have to let we have to put some value back in what we believe in, what we believe our country could be, what we believe our country should be. And that doesn't mean bringing in willy-nilly self-selected immigrants who think that they know better than us. But then we don't have an immigration program anyway, because over the last 10 years, it's been dismantled to a point of comedic adventure, I guess.
Well, they did a very good job of wrecking a program that was admired by many countries around the
Mhm.
world for its and it wasn't perfect. It never was.
Absolutely not, no. But
But among all the immigrant receiving countries, I think we had the best system, and you and I worked in it, and by and large, the Canadian public supported it. With obviously there were some exceptions, but nothing's perfect. But now I don't think anybody has any faith in this. This is a program that's been totally destroyed.
Mhm.
It's run by the people who want to come here. It's not run or
Yeah,
managed by the host community. It's completely managed and run by people outside of Canada and organizations outside of Canada. We signed away a lot of the purpose and mission of immigration to international organizations like the UN, IOM agency, or the WEF in its policy making. I mean, this is a catastrophe, really. And now we're talking about anywhere between 4 and 5 million people who aren't supposed to even be in the country.
yeah, yeah.
And the dunderheads at CBC and CTV and Globe and Mail who are all upset over the situation in the US where they're trying to remove, they got 20 million people there that shouldn't be in the country thanks to the Biden bunch and how mean they are. We're not removing anybody from this country. Nobody, it's like the typical, well, those Americans, but we're sanctimonious a lot here. We've got between 4 and 5 million people who shouldn't be here. That's no problem. Well, we're above all that. We're a sanctuary country. I'm thinking, these Laurentian dimwits living in downtown Toronto and in Montreal and Ottawa, they're living in a paradigm that the rest of the folks in this country don't live in.
That's right.
And so, this is not going to end well. We got 17% unemployment among youth here now in this country. 17%. All right, this is extraordinary.
That's almost 1 in 5. Yeah.
Exactly. We have a country run by a banker who doesn't know how to put up a spreadsheet for a budget. I mean, and you wonder why the folks down south of the 49 look at this bunch in Ottawa and say, let's whack them with 35% tariffs because they're too stupid to figure out at 25 what to do. And it's astonishing just how stupid the reaction is. Doug Ford, who was out in Alberta just last week, yucking it up with Danielle Smith, the Premier of Alberta, now wants to have an emergency meeting. You have to have an emergency meeting of the first minute. We need another emergency meeting like a hole in the head. These guys have had meeting after meeting. This is a gab fest, okay? They accomplished nothing.
Mhm.
That
Well,
and the head fool, who is
one thing they've managed to fix is the healthcare system, because when they get tired of patting themselves on the back, they throw their shoulders out, and that means a necessitated trip to the emergency ward to get it put back in. So the doctors are happy about it, I think.
well, there's no parliament. There's a crisis, and meanwhile, the prime minister goes off to the Caribbean somewhere. But apparently, you told me he's now back in Ottawa,
I'd heard read something on social media where he's going to be the one that's orchestrating this emergency meeting
in
in
Muskoka.
Muskoka. No, no.
Ooh,
And there's another. How many people, even in Ontario, can find Muskoka?
well, why in the hell don't they just all go to Ottawa? It's called the nation's capital. There's all sorts of rooms. They don't have to rent any hotels. There's empty offices throughout the
I know,
federal
but Tom,
bureaucracy.
Tom, Tom, these are people that are going to have to leave, and it might ruin a vacation. So let's make it like a vacation for. Let's go to some resort somewhere where it's going to cost us triple the amount in security to protect these guys because they can't walk around without some kind of armed protection. Uh, uh, I don't. And I guess it goes back. You remember the old Monty Python skit, The Ministry of Silly Walks?
Yes.
Well, that really is the point where the whole Canadian government comes up. And as far as the immigration program concerned, it shouldn't be called citizenship, immigration, and whatever it is, Canada. It should be called the Ministry of Ollie Ollie Oxenfree. If you can get here, good on you, because you're never going to leave. Kind of like the Hotel California.
Well, one of the folks who were asking questions about all this relationship with the U.S. because obviously the Americans have had enough of the
Mhm.
bullshitting by Ottawa and the gaslighting and the foot dragging and all sorts of other words I can come up with. But one of them was, how come you not where's the fentanyl czar? This Brasso guy that was uh, looking after the fentanyl issue, Kevin Brasso, missing in action. To which I
No,
respond, you can't be missing in action because he's never been in combat. As far as
I'm
this
I'm
fentanyl
just thinking,
goes.
Tom, that he's doing his research. He's actually gone to the library to get a dictionary to find out how to spell it. Fentanyl. Does it start with an F?
Yeah, well, he's not missing in action. He's never been in action, okay? Just like the Trudeau promise of 10,000 border officials that the idiot King said was going to take, we're gonna seal the border, no more fentanyl. It's very clear to me the Americans have had enough with this bullshit. Okay. And the whole business of security in Canada when it comes to the border. This is about airports that are being completely overrun by third world people. You got borders that are open of people that yes, they're coming out of the US running here, but that doesn't make the Americans very happy because the same creeps that they tossed out are just across the border come back anytime.
Mhm.
So, I think the next few weeks is going to be very, very challenging for Canada. And I personally, I think we're at a fork in the road here more than we must. But then, really, we can imagine. There's two things that can happen here. And the status quo ain't one of them. Okay, you either make a deal as best we can with our pals to the south. Forget the EU and China because they're not going to come and save us. This is complete and utter nonsense. that we'll make a deal with the EU and they're gonna no, that's total gibberish. You gotta go to Washington and you have to say, look, we need to have a free trade agreement, period. Okay, none of this other bullshit. The other thing is we have to synchronize our border security immigration policy with the Americans in view of terrorism, in view of criminal movements that come in and out of North America. And in lockstep with that, we have to forget any European military alliance. This is another dumb thing. I mean, what are you talking about? And I think that pissed off the Americans, where this government goes skipping off to Brussels and makes deals with the very people that want to make deals with the Washington crowd, and a lot of that is, I think, coming home to roost because they're going, wait a second, what is Canada talking about? They're going to be buying and resupplying European military equipment. Well, who do you think the Europeans buy their military equipment from? You know, the vast majority of the strategic stuff that the European armies and air forces and navies use comes from, guess where? The United States. So what are they going to do? Are they going to do an end run on technology? For example, end uses of technology by skipping over the US and making sweetheart deals with the Siemens people, or I could name any number of European corporations that are, into the military industrial complex. But the link with the boat people on the East Coast and the airplane people on the West Coast is pretty solid. And frankly, I think that probably got under the skin of the American industrial complex that thinks that, or probably believes that this is an end run being done for whatever reason by the Carney gang. And then when they read that they're giving $6.5 million to a criminal outfit, essentially called the government in Moldova, they must really scratch their head. And what is wrong with these? And you're right, it's a pittance, but it shows that these people are children playing around with fire and
Yeah.
dynamite in Ottawa, because anybody who knows the geopolitical relationship of Moldova and Eastern Europe knows this is one messy place. What the hell are you doing, getting involved in an area you know nothing about, has of no strategic interest for Canada, zero. But you're stirring the pot there, and I think that's what my view is that Carney's been jerking around him and his team, the president, on this whole trade thing, and if they don't figure out the 35% by August 1st, which is only 2 weeks
2 weeks
away,
later.
you're going to end up 50% because these people aren't playing games. Okay. And then, the shenanigans that he's done in Washington and China, it's goofy. That's just so juvenile. Like, why haven't they been sitting down, hard knocks, negotiations? Where the hell are the Canadian corporations in this whole thing? All we got is a bunch of dim-witted MPs supposedly representing Canada. Meanwhile, the Americans have corporate leaders who are part of their negotiating team. Like, you're talking about, a junior varsity team going up against an NFL Super Bowl champion. Like, what is wrong with this bunch? I'm just
Part and
exasperated.
parcel, I think, Tom, what's wrong with it is that these same people that guided uh, the previous regime here under Trudeau are now leading the regime under the so-called banker. We've got Gerald Butts, we've got Katie Telford, we've got how many other people in his cabinet, some of whom are actually turfed from Trudeau's cabinet.
True.
Uh, I don't know. There was an article in somebody had said, well, the reason we get these kind of people is because we don't pay our politicians enough. And I see today that, yeah, we maybe don't pay them enough, but my God, they got, what was it, 11 or no, 21% over 2 years where their pensions have gone up, or 18%.
Yes.
Mine doesn't do that.
No.
So we're paying these people well, but you could pay them $1 million and give them a $2 million a month pension. And the people that would be smart enough and able to run this country know full well that they don't want the job. You couldn't pay them enough. So all you would do is get bigger, greedier people in there who are just looking at ways to line their pocket.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, I think the incompetence and the tone deafness of this Carney bunch after 2.5, 3 months is self-evident.
well,
And
it is. Yeah.
they really do not read the room. They don't read the room as far as the folks on the street in Canada. They really do not grasp the mission and the purpose of the Americans when it comes to dealing with North America. Forget all this other nonsense about the EU and China and Singapore and whatever else they want to dream up. Because the Canada as we have known it is not there anymore. And this government is guaranteeing that it won't be there much longer because there really is, as I said, a fork in the road. Canada as a sovereign country with an open trade and a synchronous military border security alliance with the U.S. is one way. Then you keep your sovereignty, but you have to compromise and you have to understand your
Yeah.
relationship with your big neighbor, the only superpower in the bloody planet. The other version is you jerk around like you're doing now, and you end up making Canada into a series of sovereign states that'll be part of the United States. I mean, there'll be a sovereign state like the 51st, the 52nd, the 53rd, the 54th. That's what'll happen if you keep doing this. You don't have any other choice.
Okay.
You either decide you're going to have a sovereign country that is going to have to function like a sovereign country with deals, tough ones as they may be, with their neighbor, or you jerk around like you're doing now, and literally jerking around, and you're going to end up being subsumed in a merger or an acquisition, whatever. And Brookfield, by the way, that's what they do for a living. They, where Mark Carney comes from, they do mergers and acquisitions. That's what a hedge fund does. And he's a hedge fund manager. And when he talks about he has all this experience negotiating, that's what he negotiated,
Mhm.
right? He
You know,
negotiated that kind of stuff. So,
I took a bike ride yesterday and went down along the border, and I was mildly surprised, but pleasantly surprised to see lineups going into the United States, most of which were, in our case, British Columbia plated vehicles.
mhm,
When we came back along the ride, looking back, there was a long lineup of cars coming back into Canada. Again, a lot of Canadian plated cars because the ones that go down have to come back.
sure.
But it gets into like if this is and I guess this is where I'm going with this is that now we've got 2 weeks, and then within this next 2 weeks, we're going to see, I think, the government of Canada start to ramp up its rhetoric around how the United States is bad and how there are not a good trade partner, and let's drive another wedge into this thing and let's make them the big boogeyman again. And I think people are starting to smarten up and saying, I know that maybe buying from the United States isn't a good thing, but, and I saw a social media comment about, yeah, I'm one of those people that goes south because I can't get the medicine that my wife needs in Canada. And when I go to the United States, it only costs me $20. So we have to sit back and realize that we can't just shut off this north-south trade pattern that we have. It's just, and sure, yeah, maybe we need to reach out to Asia. Maybe we need to reach out to Europe to expand our ability to sell our products.
Yeah. And what products would that be, Bob?
I don't
On
know,
our
but
oil and our gas, and this government doesn't want to build the pipelines to ship them.
I
So
know.
what are you going to
And I
sell
guess
them?
that's the whole thing is that we're well, the previous prime minister said that Germany didn't have a business case to buy our LNG, and here they're
Yes.
buying Russian LNG. So it's purely manufactured, I think, to destroy the country, worse than what it is. And I think part and parcel of that is that, I would caution Alberta, Saskatchewan, and even our brethren in Quebec to not rush into separatism to become a state. If you want to separate as a separate country, a separate entity that's not beholden to the United States, not beholden to Canada. Uh,
Yeah,
how many Liechtenstein, Monaco? How many places are there around the world where it's just a country within a country that manages quite well? Thank you very much.
yeah.
Daniel,
That's you're
Alberta has,
thinking outside the box there, Bob.
well, yeah, but Daniel Smith would do far better to be an independent country negotiating a pipeline through Montana and then have an access either through New York or Seattle or wherever it happens to be to get that oil out to the world market.
Sure.
Obviously, not going to happen when we have to deal with what's going on in Canada, where um, Quebec has basically said no to any kind of pipeline through their territory. And then, of course, when we start to build a pipeline, well, some of the native groups support it and some of them don't, and then it goes before the courts. And why would a company even want to come here?
I don't know. Well, they don't come here because there's been no investment in this country of any size from outside the country for a decade.
Mhm.
We've chased away foreign investment here for 10
Maybe,
years.
well, and I guess maybe that is not a bad thing because the people that are coming here, these new million people are going to be before the refugee boards, are going to realize pretty soon that the money isn't going to be there. And one of the comments that came up, I see over and over again, is take away the benefits and the people won't stay.
Oh,
Pretty
that's
soon we're not going to have the
yeah,
money benefits. So
yeah,
if it hasn't happened already.
yeah. You take away the trough,
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
the users disappear. That's true. But
Mm.
it's it's so discouraging because we may be a minority to speak, talking like this at the moment because I look at some of the comments coming back on our ex account and some of them are just, like these people are literally, in Jonestown drinking the Kool-Aid. We're gonna take up arms and we're gonna deal with the Americans. I'm going, what are you talking about? There are no
Well,
arms.
first and foremost, you won't have any arms because the government's taking them away.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's the first one. And what the green-haired nose ring people are going to take on the 82nd Airborne? Like, are you crazy? I mean, please. And I know we're going to be criticized for being, traitors or whatever. This has got nothing to. It really and truly, there really
No,
are only two choices that this country, if it wants to stay together, can do. One is to stay together and make the best deal possible with your superpower neighbor, or the other one is you fall apart and the sum of your parts become
something else.
something else, because this is the status quo is not doable. Okay,
No,
and this
no.
Pollyanna stuff that's been sold since the election by the Laurentian elites and some interesting banking circles out of the WEF and others. I mean, let's be brutally frank here. This is a globalist agenda, and the flag bearer for it is Carney and his crowd. Okay,
And
and
it
they
didn't work
don't
out
give a
very well
rat's
in Canada.
behind about Canada. That is not their priority. Their priority is to be slaves to their WEF and globalist masters. All
And
right.
I think they tried that in Australia and New Zealand, and it's starting to have a backlash there too. So,
That's right.
maybe
And I'll point out that our superpower neighbor to the south, which in my opinion is clearly losing patience with this bunch, which is why we're getting, here's a letter, 35%. If you don't like that, we'll make it 50 on September 1st. I swear to God that they're so annoyed with this juvenile approach that's been taken by the Ottawa crowd. And the along with Doug Ford, oh, we must have an emergency meeting. Another meeting isn't going to solve anything. You got to have decisions that forget the meetings. Take some decisions and go to town with it. Okay, but
Hmm.
they don't even do that. And
No.
and by the way, there's this ridiculous thing promoted by the media, CTV and CBC, that somehow if we get our elbows up, we're going to teach the Americans a lesson. And I'm going, I don't know where you're getting this stuff from. There isn't a
Yeah.
single economic think tank, left, right, center, that thinks this is a good idea and that it's doable.
No.
Okay. The mouse that roars gets crushed by the elephant.
And I guess this is the whole thing that in the next 2 weeks, we're going to start to see, my opinion, personal opinion, that we are going to start to see more rhetoric on how the United States is mistreating us and how they're bad and why we shouldn't do this and why we shouldn't do that. And the reality is, folks, I think it's time that we sat down and have a really hard look and found out that the enemy is not the United States. The enemy is us. And we have to really take a strong stance and look at that. The the country over the last decade has been run by people who are ineffective.
Incompetent,
Well, there's a lot of I words I think you can throw in there. It's just,
idiots, imbeciles.
yeah, yeah.
But
And
it's easy to throw stones. But the
it
point
is.
is that the records, the statistics, we've seen chart after chart, organization after organization, think tank after think tank prove beyond a doubt that this country has been driven down into the bottom tiers of the democracies of the world, just
Mhm.
economically and otherwise. Okay, why that has been allowed to, why Canadians got so stupid so quickly, I do not know, but they did. In 10 years' time, they allowed this bunch basically to sell them a bill of goods. And here we are. We have half the earning power of an American after 10 years. Okay. We're dead last in the OECD. We're way up there at the top. In 2 years, we've imported more people in this country than for 10 years before that. I mean, it just everything we do is completely antithetical. I'm trying to think of the word. Uh, 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 Contrary to common sense. Okay, is the best way to do it. Let's not get
Mhm.
too fancy here. And so we're in deep trouble, and there's this like the summer doldrums are here. No one seems to be paying attention. Like I said, this morning you wake up to Canada giving money to a country no one's ever heard of for what reason is it makes no sense, for no strategic value. And I really do believe that they're so tone deaf and not interested at the top that they let the minions do this stuff. Because you're right, it's 6.5 million. What's 6.5 million does? A pittance. So some twit in the foreign ministry thought, oh, this is a good idea, and they just did it, never thinking that actually it'll show up on the website of the organization saying we gave this money for this reason to this country. So
Well, and that,
I will venture to guess that as much as I think, in my opinion, that the top of the heap of this political system in Canada is as dumb as a sack of bricks. This must piss off Carney. He doesn't need this bad news now. Okay, that because unless he really did decide this was a good idea, but it,
well,
it it defies logic.
it defies logic, but it wasn't an as existential threat that we've never seen before since the Second World War in this country. So uh, it's another wedge, and that's all it is. We're great at driving wedges in this country,
Well,
and we wonder why things are starting to fall
Well,
apart.
let me point out that since we're talking about the wedges, here's a reaction by our pals to the south as we play this stupid game. Exports to the U.S. dropped 12.6% last year from 13.6%. So we're going down. Petroleum exports down 39%. Electricity exports down 35%. Nickel down 34%. Gold mining down 28.5%. Everybody thinks that if we cut this off, Americans are going to, ooh, I'm all worried. Well, let me tell you something. The only
They're
thing
not.
we exported last year in great numbers, hang on to your hat here, was 557% surge in storage batteries, subsidized by taxpayers. Okay, not an industrial corporation making money for its shareholders. No, Canadian taxpayers were basically fleeced. Okay, and the batteries that were sent to the States with a big surge of 557.5% was paid out of taxpayers' pockets
Yeah.
because there was no investment by any corporation abroad into Canada battery plants. It was all tax credits
Yeah.
or straight up money from the federal government and the provinces. And Canadian built cars shipped to the South down 18.6%.
Yeah.
So these clowns, these Laurentian elites who think that this is going to affect the US economy, they're dreaming in Technicolor. They
Yeah.
don't need our oil. They're totally self-sufficient.
Yeah.
Okay. They don't need our lumber. He's right. Hate his guts, hate Trump's guts, but he's right. They don't need our lumber. They got lots of forests.
Yeah.
And then what are we going to provide?
Nothing. Well, I think that's a point to say, Canada, wake up. And a little bit of a spoiler, watch for the graphic at the beginning of this episode.
Yes, the meme at the beginning of this episode
Mm.
will be, yes, it's an oldie, but a goodie, just to let you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, don't forget to
Well,
hit
that,
the
yeah,
like
there's
button,
that. Yeah.
folks.
Like
Uh,
us.
yeah, and you see beside Bob there, buymeacoffee.com/border pull. We certainly could use the help because we do
Yeah.
this for fun and for not profit. And we,
Very much
we
so.
really want to see some positive stuff come out of what we talk about because at the moment
Yeah.
it's depressing, honestly. Um,
But
and
have a great weekend, because we're down almost to the,
oh, are we down to that?
yeah, we are.
Oh dear, less than a minute. All right, so have a good weekend. See you next
Yeah.
Friday or earlier.
Stay tuned.